You never really forget the sound of your own public humiliation. It's not a loud sound, not really. It's the sudden, vacuum-like silence that swallows a crowd, the collective intake of breath, the rustle of 50 people turning to look at you at once. I heard that sound at our annual Maple Creek Neighborhood Association summer barbecue. I was Leo, 34 years old, a freelance sound engineer who just wanted to tend to my tomato plants and live in peace. I'd sacrificed the stability of a studio job for the freedom of working from my home studio, a converted garage I'd soundproofed myself. My sanctuary. The betrayer was Chad. My next-door neighbor. He was everything I wasn't, aggressively extroverted, dripping with a kind of new money swagger, and the self-appointed king of our quiet cul-de-sac. He stood on the deck of his stark, modern gray house, a glass of expensive bourbon in his hand, and raised his voice. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," he boomed. The chatter died down. "As your HOA vice president, I'm proud to announce we've finalized the new neighborhood bylaws. And thanks to numerous, documented complaints, we're adding a specific clause about excessive and disruptive noise." A few people murmured. He let the pause hang in the air, a predator playing with his food. Then his eyes, cold and blue, locked directly onto mine. "This is aimed at a certain household whose so-called work involves bizarre, repetitive sounds at all hours. We're talking pounding, screeching, and what I can only describe as a low-frequency hum that violates the very peace of this community." My blood turned to ice. 50 faces swiveled toward me. I saw pity, curiosity, and worst of all, judgment. They were seeing me through Chad's eyes, the weird, reclusive noisemaker. After 50, yes, 50, formal complaints to the police, who have been incredibly patient, "It's time for this to end," Chad announced, a triumphant smirk twisting his lips. "The next violation will result in immediate fines and, if necessary, a lawsuit." 50 police calls. He'd been counting. He was proud of it. My heart hammered against my ribs. The urge to scream, to overturn the picnic table, to finally unleash 2 years of pent-up fury was a physical force. But I didn't. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I looked at Chad, and I gave him a small, calm smile. I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He was expecting outrage. He was expecting a scene. He got silence. I simply nodded, turned, and walked away, leaving the sound of stunned silence behind me. The betrayal wasn't an affair or a stolen inheritance. It was a war of attrition against my right to exist peacefully in my own home. It started subtly, about 6 months after Chad and his wife, Brenda, moved in. It began with the lawn. I mowed mine on a Saturday morning. An hour later, I'd get a text from the HOA president, forwarded from Chad, with a grainy photo of a single dandelion on my lawn, citing weed propagation. Then it was my garbage cans, placed 6 inches too close to the curb. Petty, annoying, but manageable. Then the noise complaints started. The first time the police came, I was baffled. It was a Tuesday at 3 p.m. I was editing dialogue for a local documentary, the volume at a respectful, conversational level. "Sir, we've had a complaint of a domestic disturbance, sounds of a violent argument," the officer said. I laughed, thinking it was a mistake. I was alone. The only argument was me trying to get a narrator to reread the line, "The majestic eagle," with more feeling. The second time, I was testing a low-frequency sound effect for a horror game, a deep, rumbling bass tone that lasted all of 3 seconds. Chad called it a structural disturbance. The police were apologetic but firm. "Just try to keep it down, sir." Chad's accomplice was the system itself. The non-emergency police line, the lax HOA rules he learned to manipulate, and the sheer, tedious bureaucracy of it all. He exploited my trust in the idea that people are generally reasonable. He wasn't. He was a bully who had found the perfect, legalistic way to poke me endlessly. The calls kept coming. Me playing my acoustic guitar too loudly at noon. Me running my power saw for a woodworking project on a Sunday afternoon. One time, he called because my laughter was unnervingly loud and frequent during a movie night with friends. The police knew me by name. They'd show up with weary looks, knowing it was another bogus call from Chad, but legally obligated to respond. He wasn't just trying to annoy me. He was trying to paint a picture of me as an unstable, disruptive element. He was trying to get me evicted, or to break me so completely that I'd sell my house and leave. He was sabotaging my career, my reputation, and my mental health, all from the comfort of his own home. The turning point was the 50th police call. It was a Thursday. I was in my studio, which is a fully soundproofed room. I wasn't working. I was sitting in absolute silence, reading a book. I saw the police cruiser pull up from my window. A deep, cold fury settled in my stomach. This was no longer harassment, this was a declaration of war. I am a sound engineer. My entire career is built on understanding acoustics, vibration, and the physics of noise. I can isolate a single voice from a crowded room recording. I can create a sound so quiet it's felt more than heard. Chad had chosen to fight me on my home turf. It was the biggest mistake of his life. I went to my computer. I started a log. Every interaction, every police report number, every timestamp. I filed Freedom of Information Act requests for all the calls made from Chad's address to the police non-emergency line. The stack of paper was staggering. The reasons were laughable: suspicious humming, rhythmic tapping, unexplained vibrational feeling. But logging was defensive. I needed to go on the offensive. I needed to understand the why. I started paying attention. I noticed the pattern. The police were always called when Brenda's car was gone. Brenda was a sweet, quiet woman who always looked a little sad. The calls happened most frequently on Thursday afternoons and Tuesday evenings. Brenda's book club was on Thursdays. Her yoga class was on Tuesdays. One Tuesday, from my upstairs window, I saw it. Brenda's car pulled away. 20 minutes later, a sleek, red sports car pulled into Chad's driveway. A woman, definitely not Brenda, got out and went inside. She was there for 2 hours. It wasn't about the noise. The noise complaints were a smokescreen. They were his alibi. He was having an affair, and that the disruptions were his cover story to explain police visits to his wife, or perhaps just a way to vent the secret stress of his double life. He was using me as his emotional punching bag. That's when the idea began to form. A perfectly calibrated, acoustic revenge. If he was so sensitive to noise, I would give him a symphony. One only he could hear. I went to my studio and opened a blank project file. I began to design my masterpiece. I wouldn't break any laws. I wouldn't violate the decibel limits set by the city. I would use science. The next day, I went to the local garden center and bought 4 large, decorative landscape rocks. That evening, under the cover of dusk, I placed them strategically along the property line, nestled in the flower beds on my side, but as close to his house as possible. To anyone else, they were just rocks. Inside each rock, I had securely housed a waterproof, wireless speaker, powered by a long-lasting battery pack. They were painted to blend in perfectly. They were my orchestra. The control system was a customized app on my phone, linked to a small transmitter hidden in my attic. I could control each speaker independently. I could play different sounds at different frequencies and volumes from each one. I could create a moving, swirling soundscape that was impossible to locate. The first test was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. I waited for a Thursday afternoon. Brenda left. The red sports car arrived. I opened my app. I selected a sound file I had created, the faint, almost imperceptible sound of a dripping faucet. It was at a very specific mid-range frequency that is notoriously irritating to the human brain. I set it to play from the rock nearest his home office, at a volume of 25 decibels, quieter than a whisper. An hour later, I saw Chad come out onto his back deck, looking around, a frustrated expression on his face. He looked at my house. I was visible in my kitchen, calmly drinking a glass of water. I waved. He scowled and went back inside. He had taken the bait. The game was on. The symphony lasted for 3 weeks. I never played a sound when Brenda was home. I only played when he was alone, or when his guest was over. I rotated the sounds. The low-frequency hum he hated so much, but so quiet it was a ghost of a sensation. The sound of a distant, arguing couple, muffled as if through a wall. A few random, single piano notes. The faint beep of a smoke detector with a low battery. I'd play them for 10 minutes, then stop for an hour. Then start again with something else. I was composing a concerto of confusion and paranoia. He called the police twice during this period. Both times, I invited the officers inside. I showed them my soundproof studio. I played them the absolute silence of my house. "I don't know what to tell you, officers," I'd say, my voice full of concerned confusion. "He's been doing this for years." It's worrying that I saw the change in their demeanor. They were no longer weary, they were suspicious. Of him. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my backyard, watering my tomatoes. Chad stormed out of his house, his face a mask of rage. He marched right up to the property line. "You! Turn it off," he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. I turned off the hose nozzle slowly. "Turn what off, Chad?" "You know what. The buzzing. The dripping. It's you. I know it's you." I gave him my calm, neighborly smile. "The police didn't find any noise, Chad. Maybe you should get your hearing checked. Or your carbon monoxide detectors." He cycled through his emotions rapidly. The anger was first. "I will ruin you. I'll have you thrown out of this neighborhood. I'll sue you for every penny you have." I just stared at him, my expression unchanging. His anger faltered, replaced by manipulation. "Look, Leo, we got off on the wrong foot. Maybe we can come to an arrangement. I can make the complaints go away." I shook my head slowly. "The complaints are the least of my concerns now." That's when the begging started. A desperate, pathetic whine entered his voice. "Please. Just stop. What do you want? Money? I'll pay you. Just make it stop." I took a step forward, my voice dropping to a low, calm, and utterly cold tone. "I want you to understand something, Chad. You called the police on me 50 times. You tried to destroy my peace, my work, my life. You did it, I believe, as a cover for your own extracurricular activities." His face went white. "I am a sound engineer," I said, my words precise and sharp. "You have been listening to a carefully curated audio experience, designed by me, for you. The dripping, the humming, the arguing, it's all me. And you can't prove a thing. The police think you're having a mental breakdown. Your HOA friends are starting to wonder. What do you think Brenda will think?" He stared at me, his jaw slack. The realization dawned in his eyes, the horrifying, gut-wrenching understanding that I had not only been steps ahead of him, but that I had built a trap from which he could not escape. His downfall was not a dramatic explosion, it was a slow, silent, inescapable pressure, and he was only just now feeling the full weight of it. "It stops," I said softly, "when you leave. You don't belong in this neighborhood. You never did." He stumbled back into his house. The real fallout began a week later. I saw Brenda's car parked in the driveway for 3 days straight. Then, on the 4th day, a moving truck arrived. It was a Saturday morning when Brenda walked over to my mailbox, where I was collecting letters. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her chin was held high. "Leo," she said, her voice steady. "I'm leaving him. We're moving out." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I genuinely was. For her. She gave a sad, knowing smile. "Don't be." I found texts on his phone. From her. And a long, rambling email he'd drafted to his therapist, talking about persistent auditory hallucinations and stress. She looked at my house, then back at me. "He kept ranting about you. About sounds. But the police reports, they all said your house was silent. I just listened. I think his guilt was eating him alive," she said, piecing it together in a way that was perfectly convenient for me. "And his mind just created a prison for him. A prison of sound." In that moment, I felt a pang of something. Not guilt, but a profound sense of tragedy. This woman was collateral damage. "I never wanted any of this to touch you, Brenda," I said quietly. "I just wanted to live in peace in the home my grandfather built." She nodded, a tear finally escaping. "I know. I'm sorry for what he put you through. It's over now." As she walked away, I knew the rest of the neighborhood would side with that narrative. Chad, the stressed-out, cheating husband, had a mental break and tormented the quiet, harmless neighbor. It was a story that made sense. It was clean. And it was exactly what I needed. Chad's collapse was swift and total. Brenda filed for divorce. Her father, I learned, was a partner in the firm where Chad worked. He was not only fired but reportedly faced a financial audit initiated by his now former father-in-law. The HOA, upon hearing the real story from a sympathetic Brenda and the now skeptical police, quietly asked for his resignation. His reputation was ash. The mistress, seeing her meal ticket evaporate, vanished. He tried to sell the house, but the market was slow, and he was desperate. He ended up selling it for a significant loss to a young family who, during the final walkthrough, asked me if the neighborhood was quiet. I smiled and told them it was the most peaceful place on earth. I watched from my window as Chad loaded the last of his belongings into a U-Haul truck. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a defeated man. He didn't look at my house. He just got in the truck and drove away. Rumor had it he moved back to his home state, to live with his elderly mother. With the silence finally real and absolute, I felt a weight lift from my soul that I had carried for 2 years. I took down the "for sale" sign I had never actually put in the yard, but which had lived in my mind for so long. I reclaimed my life. I started working on my own music again, the creative projects I'd put aside because of the stress. The sounds that filled my studio were sounds of my own choosing, beautiful, ordered, and peaceful. I dug up the 4 landscape rocks and removed the speakers. I kept the rocks as garden ornaments, a quiet monument to my victory. The weapon he had used against me, noise, complaints, psychological torture, had been the very thing I used to engineer his downfall. His own need for a smokescreen became the smoke that choked him out of his own life. The new family next door is lovely. We have barbecues together. Sometimes, the sound of their children laughing in the backyard is the best sound I could ever imagine. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Sometimes, the best revenge is a perfectly calibrated, inescapable symphony, composed just for the person who tried to silence you. And the sweetest sound of all isn't silence, it's the sound of their moving truck driving away for good. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. But if you stand your ground, with a little patience and the right skills, you can make your problems move out of state. Thanks for watching. If you have a neighbor horror story, I'd love to hear it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tale of quiet justice, don't forget to subscribe for more.